What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to What's the Table. I am pumped up today. We're making venison sausage. Let's jump in. So what actually prompted this, I was watching a video on a channel that we absolutely love, Smoky Ribs Barbecue, the other day, and they made venison sausage. It looked absolutely phenomenal. And they made, I think it was a Cajun blend from PS Seasoning, and it just looked like mouth-watering good. So I'm gonna do the same thing today using some venison and some pork from a pig and a deer that we just recently harvested. And we love PS Seasoning too. So I'm gonna use this garlic summer sausage kit. Look, I cook venison, I cook pork with garlic. This is gonna be great too. And we're gonna follow essentially the same steps that Russ did when he made his venison sausage and see how ours turns out. As far as our grinding equipment goes, we use this 1/2 horsepower Carnivore series grinder from Cabelas. Comes with all the attachments that you need, assembles very easily. It's kind of an entry-level commercial grinder, but does the job. All right, one thing that I do know about making sausage is you want everything cold, cold, cold. So as you're making this and running the meat through the grinder, that friction is gonna build up heat and it's gonna warm your meat up. So you want everything to be probably just on this side of frozen when you get started. Keep all the components cold. I had all these in the fridge or the freezer, including like the auger bit inside the grinder before we installed it here. And we're just gonna try to keep the temperature way, way down on this meat and the components as we go through. Make sure that you install, if you have one, it's a freezer pack that you can put around the bit section of the grinder that help keep that temperature down as well. So what I've got here is about 10 pounds of fresh venison. I've got about 8 or 9 pounds of fresh pork, and I've got a couple of pounds of pork fat. And we're just gonna run this through the grinder one time with this 3/8 inch grate on the front of the grinder, just to mix this stuff up before we start adding our cure and our seasoning. Well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? I wanna drop the pork fat in first and let that kind of lubricate everything as it goes through the grinder. And then we're gonna go venison and pork and just kind of alternate those pieces as we go through to mix everything together when it comes out in the bowl. All right, let's run some fat through there. Venison, and I've already actually ground this pork the other night, but I'm gonna run it through here again anyway. In case you're wondering, summer sausage didn't get its name because it can only be eaten in the summer. It's been around for hundreds of years in Western Europe, where it was popular because it could be safely eaten for months without refrigeration. All right, so that's it for our first grind. Now we're gonna take everything, kind of break it down. I wanna cool everything back down again. I wanna take these components apart, put them in the fridge or the freezer, wherever I have space, because I got a ton of meat here. I wanna throw this into the freezer, bring the temperature down, and then add our seasoning. We're gonna go back through our second grind. All right, so it is the next day. We just ran out of time yesterday. Kids crazy in the house and everything. We just didn't have time to finish. So we chilled the meat overnight after that first grind. And now we're gonna come back and add our seasoning mixture to it. And as I said before, we're using PS Seasoning's garlic summer sausage seasoning mix. And this is enough for 25 pounds of sausage. As I mentioned, I think we've got about 20 pounds of meat here. So we're just gonna portion out 5 tablespoons of this seasoning, and that'll be the right amount for 20 pounds. And we'll do something similar to portion out our cure before we add that here in the next couple of steps. So we're just gonna mix this in by hand, and then we'll run it through the grinder for a second pass. And this time we're gonna use this 4.5 millimeter plate so we get a really fine grind for our last pass through this grinder. All right, so we've got our meat all seasoned and chilled again, and now we're ready to add our maple cure, and we're gonna add this to the mixer and mix that up for a few minutes, just until the meat's kind of tacky. And we've got our maple cure here. Again, this was enough for 25 pounds. And so we've removed 8 3/4 teaspoons of the maple cure. That's enough for 5 pounds of meat, leaving us with the remaining maple cure that we're gonna add to this meat. And I'm gonna add 3 cups of water to this and mix that all together and pour it over this meat. I'm gonna mix it by hand a little bit, and then we'll put it in this KitchenAid mixer a little bit at a time, because my mixer is the only one that I have, and it can only hold so much. So we'll do this 4 to 6 minutes per sort of batch of meat until all this is done, and then we're ready to stuff the sausage casings. All right, so we've gone to our other attachment on here. This is kind of a more something you'd use for bread or dough, and it's working a lot better. I think that first attachment was just a little bit too aggressive. It was a little too porous, too many places for it to grab the meat. It was like throwing the meat out of the bowl. So this is working a little bit better. Back to it. All right, let's see how we're doing here. What we're looking for is for this meat to be kind of tacky and stick to. There we go. See it sticking to my fingers? And it's just starting to peel off. See it sticking? It's about what we're looking for. So this batch is good. All right, so our meat is chilled, and I've got these summer sausage casings that have been soaking in warm water for, I mean, at this point, probably close to an hour, but you want it for at least 30 minutes. I've got the 39mm sausage stuffing funnel, and it's got this high-speed auger on the inside of it. We'll see how that performs. And we're just gonna take one of these casings and slide this onto the funnel all the way up like this. Just before we get going here, I'm just gonna kind of prick the end of this with something sharp. You can do this with a fork. And this is just intended to let the air kind of out of this as you put that first bit of sausage in there. And it's okay, because it'll seal itself naturally as you go through the rest of this process. So here we go. Now as you do this, you can see that sausage already starting to come out. You want to keep just enough pressure on this that you can let that sausage come out and fill the casing tight without air pockets in it, without restricting, holding it so tight that you're going to restrict the rest of the meat from coming out into that casing. It's kind of a balance. This is where it's a lot easier if you have an extra set of hands, where one person can kind of do the meat and the other person can handle it casing. All right, so we've stopped just a little bit before the end of this sausage, just to leave ourselves enough space to fold this in, and then we're gonna tie it shut. We're gonna fold this casing in from the top, and then I'm just gonna slowly fan fold this left and right. 2. And the goal here is we certainly just don't want this, where I'm getting ready to tie it, to come loose when we invert it and hang it in the smoker. So what I'm gonna do is just come in here and nick this first fan fold on that one side, and then the same thing on this other side. And what we're doing is just kind of notching a place for this string to sit in there where it's not going to pull loose as that weight kind of settles down onto that knot. Okay. Now I'm just going to fit this string in there where I've just notched and tie a knot as tight as I can get it. I'll go around again and tie another knot. Okay, see what it kind of looks like with those strings sitting inside that notched part of the sausage. And look at that, that looks pretty good. Nice looking summer sausage casing. We're gonna set that aside, make up the rest of these. So that's all of our sausages made. I mean, we just look at these things. I mean, they look absolutely fantastic. They're not even cooked yet. We're gonna have all of them stretched out on a drying rack, and we're gonna put those in the fridge, let them chill, let them dry overnight. Tomorrow, we're gonna get them in that smoker. The last step before we do this is just take that same little push pin and just prick some tiny little holes in there in case you've got any air bubbles in there. Let that stuff just seep out. Again, those holes are going to close naturally during this next phase of the process where you're cooking. We are ready to get these things in the smoker. We've had them in the fridge overnight. I mean, would you just look at these things? They look absolutely amazing. And it is freezing outside today. We're in full-blown Thanksgiving prep mode in this house and excited to add some summer sausage to the spread. Let's get to that smoker.
Now I had a little bit of a problem. I don't have whatever attachment lets you hang meat inside the smoker, so I had to rig something up using some extra parts from my grill.
See how my design works? It's alive! It's alive! All right, so we've had our smoker running for about 30 minutes on 350 degrees. Manufacturer recommends that you do that just so that you kill all the bacteria that's been hanging out in there in between uses. So now we're gonna bring this thing back down to just a smoke setting. That's about 110, 115 degrees. Add our sausage to it, and we're gonna cook those for about 30 minutes and then jack that temperature up a little bit. So now I'm gonna add my temperature probes here, and I'm gonna put one on the sausages in the front, maybe at the bottom, and one on the sausages in the back at the top, because these are long sausages, and the parts of the sausage toward the bottom of the smoker are probably gonna heat up a little bit quicker, so I wanna get temperature readings at both ends. Okay, so we've had this smoking now for about 30 minutes, so now we're gonna ratchet that temperature up just a little bit, put it on about 150 so it can start to cook and still continue to absorb that good smoky flavor. All right, these sausages have been smoking on 150 for about 4 hours, so I'm gonna go out here and check them real quick. Y'all come on. Now, I've lost my daylight. It gets dark so early this time of year. That's good for some things, bad for others. So as I say, these have been on 150 for about 4 hours, maybe a little bit more, and the internal temp was at the low 140s. And so we're gonna jack that up to about 175. I wanna finish off the internal temperature at about 155 degrees before we take these out of the smoker. I'm seeing 159 on the bottom of these sausages, and it just turned to 155 on the top of the sausages, so we're ready to bring these out. We're gonna drop them right into an ice bath, maybe just hold them up in the air because it's so stinking cold out here, and we wanna stop that cooking process or at least slow it down. And that's gonna help your casings avoid getting that kind of shriveled look on the outside and make a much nicer presentation. So let's get them out of the smoker and into that ice bath as quick as we can. Oh, check out those beauties. Oh my goodness. Look at the finished product, y'all. All right, so I'm gonna add some more ice to this and make sure it stays really, really cold. We're gonna leave those in there for about 10 or 15 minutes just to stop that cooking process, and then we're gonna take them inside and let them finish blooming. Let's go. Now I know where the expression comes from. I don't wanna hear about all the sausage making, I just wanna see the finished product. Didn't know it took this long. Labor of love, y'all. I love myself so much that I'm willing to spend this time making sausage for myself. I'm so pleased with this. We've got a little bit of wrinkles in some of the casings. Maybe the water wasn't cold enough, but man, look at these things. They look absolutely awesome. We're gonna throw these things into the oven for a couple of hours. Let's just say 2 hours to let them finish blooming. And that means they're just gonna finish that cooking process at room temperature. Now, I could have done this by throwing them back in the smoker. It's super, super cold outside. I don't wanna risk it. So we're just gonna put them in the oven in here. I've dried them off, just let them bloom. They're ready to eat. I could eat them now if I wanted to. We're gonna finish this process and I'm gonna taste test them in just a couple of hours.
Summer sausage is known as kind of a drier sausage. It can lose 10 to 15% of its moisture during the aging process. But friends, it is good.
Man, I'm so excited. Today is Thanksgiving Day. My family's on their way. This sausage is phenomenal. It was so good last night, taking it off the smoker. We chilled it overnight, and now I'm just thin slicing it. We're gonna put it on a charcuterie board. It's looking so, so good. You guys gotta try it. This kit from PS Seasoning makes it so, so easy. I'm thrilled with the result. I hope you guys have a happy and healthy holiday season with your friends and loved ones. Thank you so much for being with us. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It sure does help us out. We'll see you guys next time. God bless you.